So thank you so much for having me here, and today I'll be representing my company asuene to talk about just the introduction of carbon accounting. So the mission of our company is to change the world for the next generation, and this is something that is very dear and basically why asuene is coming up with this product that we have. So what we are is that we are a cloud software program, all in one, to provide you carbon accounting as well as consultancy services. Okay, so just a brief introduction for my company. So the company name is asuene. Asuene is actually a combination of two words. Asu in Japanese means tomorrow, and ene is short for energy. So basically, asuene means tomorrow energy. And the company was founded in Japan in 2019 by our founder, Kohei Nishiwada. So we have investors who started off as clients. So some of our investors are SMBC, which is one of the biggest banks in Japan, and we also have Pavilion Capital, also known as the Temasek Group, and they're from Singapore, and others such as Salesforce Ventures and Sony Innovation. So as of now, we have a collective funding raise of about 95 million SGD, and the main office, the HQ of asuene, is in Japan, Tokyo, and we do have two other regional offices, one in Singapore for the APAC region, and another in California, USA. We are proud to present to you that we are certified under the ISO 14064-3. This means that as a third party, we are certified to give you validation and also to verify your GHG claims. So if you know anything about carbon accounting, there's a lot of inaccurate data, quite a high number of inaccurate data when doing GHG calculations. I'll let you know why later on, you will see. And then we also have the ISO 27001 certificate. On top of that, we also have the certificate of partnership for carbon transparency. So this is to show to you guys that we are very committed in making sure that our services and our product will reflect the most accurate data possible. So we actually, asuene, have just completed our Series C funding, and we managed to raise $64 million in the US. So here you can see that our lead investors are SMBC, I mentioned just now, the bank from Japan. We also have SBI Investment, also Sparks. So you will see on the list, right, a lot of Japanese companies. It is simply because, again, we started off in Japan, and since 2019, so we have over 10,000 clients as to date, 6,000 being from Japan itself. So most of our investors here started off as our client, and after using our product, they decided, you know what, I believe in this product and we want to invest in it. That's how much they trust our product. So I'm not going to go too much into that. So let's go into carbon accounting now. So what is carbon accounting? It's basically a method to calculate greenhouse gases emitted by an organization, both directly and indirectly. So why is carbon accounting important? So 4 main reasons. The first one is regulatory compliance. Previous speakers have spoken about how countries and the other governments are starting to be more strict, having to implement more regulations in regards to sustainability. So this is why it is important for you guys to start doing your carbon accounting. The second one is reputation and brand value. So customers nowadays, they are more aware of their role when making decisions as to what they want to buy and the product that they purchase. So brand awareness, being sustainability is something that is very important to not only consumers but also investors. It's cost saving, so when you do carbon accounting, you can see the hotspots of what is it that quite inefficient in your production line or your areas of when operating your business, and then also competitive advantage. So I think you are probably aware that countries such as the EU and the US now, they have quite a strict carbon policy. So if you comply and if you are aware of this, then of course this will enable you to participate in more tender bidding, for example. So there are basically 3 different scopes of emissions. So scope 1 is the direct emissions. So these emissions are basically greenhouse gases emitted directly by the company-owned and controlled resources. For example, if you were to use your harvesting machinery, you use your tractors, so this is direct emissions of scope 1. Scope 2 is the indirect emissions. So these are greenhouse gases emitted indirectly. For example, like the electricity you use to power up your facilities. So these are basically energy that you purchase from other energy provider like TNB. So this would be scope 2, indirect emissions. And scope 3 is where it gets quite complex. So this is where most companies require help from their consultants to help calculate this one. So these are also indirect emissions, but it comes from the supply chain of your business. So there are 15 different categories under scope 3. So you can see it's basically divided into 2. There's the upstream and the downstream. So under upstream, you have indirect emissions such as your staff, your employee commuting back and forth to work. That considers as emission under scope 3. And then you have things such as business travels, all the meetings you have outside by flight or by train, by car even, that is considered as scope 3 of the upstream part of your business. And then for downstream, we have things such as your end of life product, the way you manage the waste and all that. For example, if you're using your fertilizer and the packaging at the end of life, how you manage that one is considered as downstream and under scope 3. So here's the basic formula for calculating your carbon emissions. So it's basically the activity data times by the emission factor. So each activity has its own unique emission factors, as well as depending on what gas you guys are trying to calculate. So I'll give you an example. If you were to use 1,000 liters of diesel, and the carbon, the emission factor for diesel is 2.68 kg of CO2 per liter, then your total emissions would be 2,680 kg of CO2 for the 1,000 liters of diesel used. So why you should start using? So I'm going to give you an example. Sime plantation, they announced December 2023 that they have a net zero targets. So what they're doing with this, right? They are starting to focus more on they're starting to be more responsible about who they elect as their suppliers, where they source their items from. So that's why what they're doing is that they're increasing the number of engagement with their suppliers to basically tell them to reduce their emissions. So this is one example. And then you have another example like Toyota. Yeah. Toyota, they now ask their suppliers to show evidence that they have reduced 3% of carbon emissions every year. So, all the big companies now, they are asking their suppliers to also produce a carbon report to show that you guys are sustainability, because their suppliers are basically their scope 3 emissions. And in order for them to reduce their emissions, this is some of the things that they can do to make sure that their carbon emissions is low as possible. So the takeaways from here is that carbon accounting is an essential tool for sustainability, compliance, as well as competitiveness. And although it might be a bit complicated, maybe perhaps you are not sure when to start, how to start, and it gets a bit overwhelming, the benefit really outweighs the challenges, the obstacles that you may face. So some of the benefits mentioned by previous speakers just now was, for example, the tax incentives, and then you also have the green financing, things such as that. And then, so you also, in order to start, just perhaps start with set a realistic goal first. You know, start with scope 1 and scope 2 because those are quite easy for you to gather data, and then track your progress and make sure that sustainability will be part of your company's DNA. So thank you so much. And please you can take a photo of this, or maybe you can meet up with me later if you want to know more about carbon accounting and our software. And I'll be happy to assist you, and I can get, usually what we do is that we have a first meeting and then we can do some assessment on your company's carbon footprint situation.